me, Andy, and welcome back to If You Seek Andy, my podcast where I just shoot the shit, I guess. Today, I want to talk a little bit about, first of all, what I call dunk culture, and then second, why I don't do disclaimers for the content I make. So, recently I've gotten back into making content. I've never been a very regular or prolific content creator for any of you who know me in real life. I've not been super consistent in the past, but recently about a month and a half ago or so, started making TikToks regularly. I was extremely resistant to joining the app in the first place, and I'll be honest, I still don't really get it, even though I believe I'm a Gen Z millennial cusp. I was born in 96. By most measures, I'm a millennial, and I definitely identify with the millennial generation in terms of culture way more. I guess to some degree, I have some Gen Z tendencies because I do kind of get this sort of short form video content. It's been going okay. It kind of grew pretty rapidly and unexpectedly, which has been a ride. It hasn't gotten too out of hand yet, which is good because I'm just not sure that I'm mentally ready for that. I don't know anyone who has a big platform on the internet, at least in person. A lot of people I know are actually quite resistant to being on social media or being very online, which, bless their hearts, they really have the right idea, don't they? But I want to talk about this thing that I've noticed, and I've also noticed it on Twitter as well, but given the built-in features in TikTok, it's been extremely prevalent on there as well. But it's essentially this phenomenon that I would like to call dunk culture. So if you have spent any time on Twitter or TikTok, I would say this is where it most commonly happens, but it happens all over the internet. It's just that the format of these social media platforms make it most conducive to what is dunk culture. But it's this phenomenon where people will quote retweet or stitch on TikTok opinions that are either blatantly false or misguided, or that people just generally disagree with, so that people can essentially pile on and refute them so they can seem smart and dunk on them and get that sweet, sweet internet clout. And I'm not a big fan of it. I don't like it. It really bothers me a lot. At first, when it started happening, it was like, oh, this is good. It means that people's opinions won't go unchallenged when they're saying, bigoted things. They can't just say it without impunity. Like, people will, quote retweet them and explain why it's wrong, or essentially point out their fallacies, or, point to facts that prove that they are incorrect, which is, in theory, a good thing. We love to see it. Hopefully it means that people express fewer bad opinions. And when I say bad, I do mean like morally reprehensible. When I say bigoted, I'm meaning, homophobic, transphobic, racist, sexist, all of the ists, because those are bad. Those, in my opinion, are just objectively bad. If your opinion is that a certain group of people does not deserve human rights, that is a bad opinion. And that I don't think it's valid. I don't think that should be a valid opinion. And in theory, that's what the original intent of these dunks were, like these quote retweets where people are pointing out how wrong someone is. And at first, I thought it was funny. I thought it was amusing, very entertaining. I've been on Twitter a lot longer than I've been on TikTok. I mean, inherently, TikTok has not been around that long, but I've been on Twitter for like a decade. I haven't always used it a lot. I have only really started using it a lot in the past couple of years. But what I see as the problem with dunk culture with these quote retweets or stitches where people take someone's ignorant opinion and then refute it because they're such big brains is that it doesn't actually promote real discussion about the issue. It's not about opening up a dialogue so that potentially we can change someone's mind. It's about getting brownie points with people who have the same political views as you already. And I don't see how that is productive personally. While it may convince it theoretically, when you quote retweet a bigoted opinion and point out where their logic fails, then maybe if someone else sees that original opinion and believes it to be true, but then sees that it was quote retweeted by you and refuted, theoretically that might change their mind, or it might make them realize that the original bigoted opinion doesn't make sense. But how often does that actually happen? Like, realistically, does that actually happen? How many people are truly going onto social media to become informed people, view all sides of an issue, and then come to a logical conclusion? There are very, very few people actually doing that. So I just don't understand the purpose of dunking on people with bad opinions, because also it happens the other way around. I mean, it's happened to me. So if we, it's weird because I have a note. I tend to keep all of my ideas for content in Google Keep, which is their Google's equivalent of like a notes app, right? And before I had any major backlash to any of my content, I actually wrote a note about dunk culture and how I think it sucks. Um, so, and another thing I did want to bring up about dunk culture and why I don't like it, aside from it not really promoting productive conversation or discussion about any of these issues, to me, it's only further amplifying people who have bad ideals and values. So why would you want to promote that? Then there's clout for the original poster as well, who had the bad opinion. There is money and clout and attention to be had from purposefully spewing bigoted opinions or controversial opinions. Because even if people are just quote retweeting or stitching to dunk on you, guess what? That is more engagement, and that fuels the algorithm. Their name is going to be put out there more. Their face is going to be put out there more. So really, it just creates this endless cycle where someone is going to spout a bad opinion, have a ton of people pile on them and dunk on them through quote retweets and stitches, and the algorithm is going to push them higher up in your feed because it's getting so much engagement and outrage. And of course, the social media site wants people on their site longer. And that's how you do it. You do it through outrage, through this dunk culture. So when you're quote retweeting someone who has a really bad opinion, then you're giving them the attention that they wanted. And ultimately, I think that's a bad thing. Like, we shouldn't be doing that. Furthermore, it puts those bad opinions, those bigoted ideas on people's timelines who didn't ask for it. That's a huge thing that really bothers me on Twitter. Luckily, I don't really follow that many people on TikTok who do this thing, but so many people on Twitter will quote retweet bad opinions just to dunk on them. And it's like, well, I didn't want to see homophobia on my timeline. I didn't want to see racist takes on my timeline. But now you're bringing it onto my timeline, and I didn't ask for that. That can be absolutely re-traumatizing for people who are parts of marginalized communities if they're continuing to see opinions about their own identity that are harmful. We never asked to see those things. So maybe when you're coming across those bad opinions, consider your audience, the people who follow you, consider how it might affect them to see that opinion, even if it's so you can refute them. Consider all of that. Plus, the dunk culture ultimately promotes the most disingenuous interpretations of what people say. So if you think about it, say on Twitter, when someone's random opinion gets continuously piled on and dunked on because it is seemingly unnuanced or bad, I have clicked into the original tweets so many times, and in the replies seen people being like, wow, I can't believe so many people are taking you seriously and stuff like that. So first of all, I mean, sarcasm or irony gets completely lost. And additionally, sometimes people are purposefully saying things either in a simplified way, maybe it's part of a thread or a longer train of thought that they were just tweeting out without thinking too much about it. But also, sometimes people just willfully misinterpret the ways that people say things. And when we're on social media, I think most of us, just regular people, just regular folks like us, we're not nitpicking every single word or phrasing that we use when we're just like tweeting our random thoughts and opinions. So sometimes maybe you might tweet something that could be interpreted in a really bad way. And once that bad interpretation starts being circulated, you're kind of stuck. Like, that's it. People are only ever going to read what you said in a negative way, even if that's not what you intended. And it could ultimately be read in a different way, in a more positive way. But when we interpret it in a negative way, it allows people to get more attention and to get more clout. So it ultimately flattens all nuance out of the discussion, because people don't want to consider the tone, consider the source, consider any of these other factors that could be affecting the meaning and intention of what someone might have tweeted or said. So earlier, and I am trying to be aware of the speed at which I talk and the filler words that I use. I'm not really used to doing a solo podcast, so please bear with me. I'll hopefully improve as time goes on, but I did earlier touch on the fact that I have been the subject of pile-ons and this dunk culture. And here's what I'll preface this with. I don't read comments anymore, and I don't look at stitches. I just can't. There's too many, and a lot of them are just bigoted. Like, a lot of them are racists and sexist and people just being shitty and mean. So there probably are some valid critiques in there, but I can't do all that damage to my mental health and my emotional well-being by sorting through all of the comments, all of the stitches, all of the replies, just to find those few either positive or actually helpful critiques. So here's what I'll say. If I ever say something or put content out where you think it's genuinely harmful, I mean, feel free to send me an Instagram DM or a DM on Twitter. I'm much more likely to check those because those platforms are much smaller for me. And if I know you in person, God bless, definitely send me a text or message me, because I never want to be the kind of person who ignores all criticism because I'm like, they're all just haters. Like, I know that as someone who has been on the receiving end of these dog piles. I know that it's super overwhelming. You get tons and tons of notifications, and you reach a point where you can't tell what is a legitimate criticism. Like, what is a reasonable criticism that is actually going to help you improve. It's very, very hard to tell. And so essentially, I do have to just kind of ignore everything. But so I made a TikTok, and this was a while ago, probably like a month ago. I made a TikTok where I said verbatim, can I be honest with y'all for a second? White women calling black women and femmes queen is starting to sound like a microaggression to me. That's exactly what I said. That's it. You can look up the TikTok. I'm sure it's been spread around a lot because I know that a lot of people are still commenting on it, stitching it, whatever. And here's the thing. I know I didn't say anything wrong. I've had plenty of black women and femmes message me to say, you were right. Like, you didn't say anything out of place or incorrect. And I have some, I know initially when I started getting the outrage over this TikTok, and mind you, I only really started getting outrage like well after I'd posted it, like weeks after. I was like, oh, suddenly it's blowing up. It got on the racist side of TikTok, so people got mad. And I had comments initially on that TikTok saying, like, you know, you have all these takes and you never miss, or, you know, like, I've been feeling this way. I'm glad you said something. Because while I've received some comments, and it is something to interrogate, I've received some comments saying, oh, you're speaking over black women, or, you know, they never, like, this isn't your area. This isn't your conversation to bring up. And I think that could be a fair criticism, except that in this case, I specifically said, I feel this way. I never said, how dare you call black women and femmes queen? I never said, black women feel this way. I said, it seems like this to me. That is the way I phrased it. And that was purposeful because I'm not a black woman or femme. So I cannot directly speak to that experience. But in this case, I did not speak for them. I didn't. That's just the facts, right? And so it is, like I said, it's very overwhelming having been on the receiving end of a ton of outrage over just it was like 15 seconds, if that. Maybe 10 seconds, maybe less. It was like 2 sentences that I said. And I know that the people who are stitching it, I know at least one person who has stitched it because I got a DM about it. Like I said, if you really want to reach me, DMs are the way to do it. But a black woman messaged me to say, hey, that other black woman who stitched you is known to be like not a good person and have some bad opinions. So, you know, just know you didn't do anything wrong. So I know at least one person kind of disingenuously stitched it to say, like, to disagree with me, right? And I don't know exactly what they said. Like I said, I haven't viewed any of the stitches. And this is where that dunk culture comes in, where people are taking this very, very short TikTok that I made that was, I didn't really think about it when I made it. It was based off of a tweet I had already quote many months ago. And it's clear to me that the people who are stitching my TikTok, they're not interested in actually having a conversation about this. They're not actually trying to open up a dialogue and teach me something, right? That's not what this is about. This is about them being able to stir up outrage in their followers and feel righteous and feel like they're in the right. They don't want to like have a nuanced conversation with me about this, about where I might be wrong or whether or not it was my place. No, they just want me to say sorry and say that I'm wrong, admit that I was wrong and they were right. That's it. They don't actually want to change anyone's mind. They just care about being right. And I don't see the point in addressing those kinds of people. I don't see the point in trying to make peace with those people because, number one, like I said, I didn't do anything wrong. I'm not going to apologize for anything. But second, they don't actually care about whether or not what I said was right or wrong. They just want to be right. They want to prove that they're smarter than me, that they're better than me. And I don't see the point in using my time and emotional energy on those kinds of people. They're disingenuous. And this leads me to kind of the second portion of this evening's little pod, which is about disclaimers and why I will never make a disclaimer for my own content. So I get a lot of disingenuous replies that are essentially making the most ungracious, least generous interpretations of my content. And on a platform like TikTok or one like Twitter, where it's literally based on brevity, on being short, on being quick, I feel like it's ridiculous to even try to make disclaimers or caveats for my content because these platforms are not built for nuance. They were not made to have in-depth conversations with people. There's even on TikTok, for anyone who doesn't know, they literally limit how many characters you can have in a comment. So even if you were trying to have a back and forth with someone on a TikTok, like about the topic that's in the TikTok, it's really hard to. There's no real way to have discourse on these platforms. Same with Twitter. Twitter is also based around having limited characters. So to me, I'm just not going to waste my breath on it. Of course, I'm going to be using generalizations and making broad statements that literally can't be true. You can't make generalizations about any group of people and not have exceptions, unless it's like, we all die. Like, yeah, of course we all die. But if I make any generalization about like men or white people or straight people, of course there's going to be exceptions. People are complex. And I know that. But for the sake of brevity and for comedic timing, I'm not going to bother with saying, I know not all men. I know XYZ. There's no point because the people who are going to get mad at me are going to get mad at me either way, whether or not I put a disclaimer. I'm even very careful to phrase things as my opinion. I'll say, I feel that, or in my experience, or I thought. And people will still jump on me as if I'm stating these things as fact, which I'm not. Like, I use the phrasing where it is clearly my opinion. But that doesn't matter to them. They're still going to get mad at me as if I have just outright stated something as a fact. And even if I did, like, I don't have to prove anything to random strangers on the internet. That is not my job. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to explain myself to anyone. The people who get upset when I say make generalizations about white people, say not being able to handle spicy food, they were going to get mad at me either way. If I said, I know there are some white people who like spicy food. If I say, I have literally dated white people who can handle food that is spicier than I can handle, they're still going to get mad at me. Like, I made a TikTok talking about how there are certain red flags in people's Tinder bios that come up for me as an Asian woman that make me suspect that they might fetishize Asian women. And I even said, so one of them I said was anime, mentioning anime in your bio. I said, I have dated people who like anime. There is nothing wrong with liking anime. But if you put it in your Tinder bio, it almost certainly means that you have yellow fever, especially if you're white. And so I put all of the caveats on in there. I explained like, hey, in and of itself, it's not wrong to like anime. Like obviously there's nothing wrong with liking a type of content, you know? And that would be ridiculous. That would be ridiculous to say like anyone who likes anime, it's a no-go for me. Like no. I even said it very clearly. Like I've dated people who like anime. I don't see anything wrong with that. But then people will still get mad at me for making generalizations about white people who talk about anime in their dating profiles. Like that is such a specific subset of people. And even though I put in like based on my experience, I say these are the caveats, people will still get mad at me. You know, the racists will still show up and they will still make the least generous interpretation of my words. Like, regardless of how I say it, regardless of if I include these little disclaimers or whatnot. So I'm just not going to waste my breath on it. You know, I'm just trying to entertain people, maybe say something that is relatable to other people, help people have a chuckle, or maybe help people learn something in terms like just based off of my experiences and stories. Like I'm certainly no expert on things like dating or love or relationships. I've thought a lot about them and I talk a lot about them, but you know, I never claimed to be an expert. I never, you know, I don't have masters. I'm not going back to school. I'm not certified or anything like that. But then people still take what I say so seriously. But I'm not making serious content. If if the content I make can help one person, whether that's make them chuckle, make them smile, help them learn something about themselves, to me that is worth it. That's all that I'm aiming for, is that one person will benefit from the content I make, even if it's in the smallest ways, even if it's just a breathe out, a quick breathe out of their nose, just a great. I love that. That is all I ever wanted. I'm not out here like trying to change the world or anything. And yet still people will, you know, they'll just take what I say, make a straw man out of it, you know, and say like, well, you can't say that about blah 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 blah, or are you really trying to say that blah blah blah? And it's like, no, I'm not, and I don't have to explain myself to you. I'm not going to waste my breath on you, because no matter what I say, you're going to be unhappy with me. It doesn't matter how I say it. It doesn't matter how nicely I say it. It doesn't matter if I include all of the disclaimers in the world. They will still get mad. So the truth is, you're not going to make everyone happy. If you want to make content, if you want to share your opinions and your views and your perspectives, you're never going to make everyone happy. There will always be people upset with you. And that's okay. You just kind of got to like keep in perspective who it is that you're making mad. So in this case, like with the whole white women calling black women queens TikTok, it's like almost all white people, especially white women, getting mad at me. So I'm like, oh, okay, then I don't care. You know, if there were more black women and femmes coming into my DMs to say, hey, this was harmful, I would probably reconsider it. Of course, that's not really happening because it's not actually wrong. But for instance, I have had other TikToks where people have come into my DMs and been very respectful. And I also genuinely appreciate it when people come to me and explain why something was hurtful or harmful or why they didn't like something. Because I know that it takes a lot of time and energy to really think things out and to put it out into words. It's not easy, especially if you do feel hurt or offended by something. I understand that's not easy. So I always appreciate that time and emotional energy that is put into that. But I have had members of the LGBTQ community, particularly people who are gender nonconforming or non-binary, come into my Instagram DMs about a particular TikTok where I refer to an ex-partner as a boyfriend, when I know, as far as I knew, starting like 2 or so years ago, that they were going by they them pronouns and identified as non-binary. So they did point out like, hey, that's not great. It's really kind of invalidating for non-binary people. So I was like, okay, I understand that perspective. That is something I will certainly think about and take into consideration. And I ultimately did decide to private that video because there was a better way for me to do it. You know, I tend to think of what I make on TikTok as like I'm workshopping jokes. If I'm making jokes, when I'm making kind of more informative content, like stuff about dating or whatever, it's not really about jokes. But if I am like doing these like quick one-off TikToks, or if I'm telling a story that has some sort of punchline, like I think of it as if I'm workshopping a joke. If I get feedback that says, hey, this wasn't funny, or the way that you phrased this wasn't great, or, XYZ was kind of hurtful, then I will, look at it again. I will think about it. I will say, is the harm that this potentially could have, how harmful do I think it really could be? And then I'll weigh that against kind of the benefits of it, right? And in that particular case, I was like, you know what? Let me just private it. There's no point in, continuing if it potentially could be hurting people. And I can do it better. I know I can do better. I can rephrase it. I can kind of reconsider the format of this joke and the way that I was telling this and what exactly was the joke, right? And so it's not even that I don't believe that I'm above reproach or criticism. It's not even that. It's that ultimately you have to consider who the criticism is coming from and all of that. And so the key thing is there, I didn't put any, disclaimers on like, say that video that people in the LGBTQ community thought was harmful. And I will say, I have close friends who are part of that community, and I sent it to them and they were like, personally, I thought it was fine. And, that's great, but of course they can't speak for the whole community. And so, but I didn't have a disclaimer there. I didn't have the disclaimer that, hey, at the time that we were together, we were boyfriend, girlfriend. It felt, I didn't have the disclaimer that it felt disingenuous to tell this story and say that they were my partner, because honestly, I didn't really call them my partner. We didn't really call each other partner. And so that felt disingenuous to me. And that didn't feel like the truth of what that relationship was, but it doesn't matter, because the people who were just straight out mad at me for no reason, like, that's one thing, right? But it's another when people are seeing the content that I've made and they are not like purposefully misinterpreting what I've said. They're not purposefully making the worst assumptions about why I've said things. If they come to me and they know like, hey, you did this thing that was not great. You said this thing that was not great. I know that was not your intention, but it still had this impact. Then I can acknowledge that. I can recognize that that is actually helpful criticism, because they didn't need that caveat or that disclaimer to assume that I had the best intentions. And that's, to me, like the most important thing, right? It's about identifying where it's most helpful to place your energy. And to me, it's like, I'm not gonna bother like putting disclaimers up on my TikToks, especially because that platform is not built for nuance. It is not meant for in-depth conversations. Because I'm not going to concern myself with those things. The people who it actually affects, most of the time, understand where I'm coming from. They typically do. And at that point, if I have still harmed someone, then that's when I reconsider. But if it's just because I've said something very broadly about white people not being able to handle spicy food, oh my God, I do not care who that offends. Because those people who are offended would be offended either way. They wouldn't care. They wouldn't care if I started off that story to say like, and I've dated white people who can handle spicier food than me. I know plenty of white people who can eat really, really spicy food, but that's not the point. Even if I'd said that stuff, they would still get mad at me. It doesn't matter to them whether or not I have good intentions or I actually know what I'm talking about. They're just going to take the exact words and take it out of context. They're going to decontextualize it just so that they can feel good about dunking on me. And you know what? That's fine. That is their right. They can leave all of the hateful, bigoted comments they want. They can come into my Instagram and leave, comments saying like, ew, or you're a racist, or like calling me queen because they think that'll like offend me, even though it's like, you're literally proving my point, but whatever. Um, they can do whatever they want. I mean, I don't have to engage it. I'm not going to apologize for it, and I do not have to waste my time on those people. And I would suggest you don't either, because who cares what they think? If the people who are offended by what you said are the people who are in power. So like if I say something about dating and the people who get offended by it are like straight white men, I'm definitely saying something right and truthful. If I say something about my experience as an Asian woman and white people get mad, I've said something right, because the only reason why they would be offended if there was some sense of truth to it, if it cut into them in a personal way. And people will continue to project onto you, and they'll, you know, interpret you the way they want to interpret. I'm not out here to like change people's minds about anything fundamental. I'm hoping that, maybe people can learn a tip or two from me about like dating and about communication and relationships. But other than that, most of the time I'm just like chilling. I'm just being me. I'm just like voicing my opinions, and that's all I'm trying to do, really. Anyway, now that I'm done with my little rant, which is all this is really, I guess that's what a solo podcast is a rant. There is one segment of this show that I wanted to keep from the previous format, which is the hill I will die on. So, for those of you who are unfamiliar, the hill I will die on is a little segment where I will talk about an opinion I have that is extremely strong, but also about something that is mundane or ultimately doesn't really matter. And so today, the hill I will die on is that there should be no such thing as guilty pleasure media. Okay, hear me out. So, first of all, everything is problematic. Everyone is problematic. I think that in terms of consuming media by people who are like not good people, that's a whole nother story. But to keep it more trivial, I'm talking about like when people say they have guilty pleasures, like watching trashy reality TV shows, right? Like Jersey Shore back in the day, or Real Housewives, or whatever it is. I don't think you should feel guilty about that stuff. Sometimes we consume media just to be entertained, to have fun, to enjoy it. And that's okay. Not everything has to be super deep. Not everything has to like say something about our society that we live in. Not everything has to be a big political statement. Sometimes you can enjoy things just because it's enjoyable. Like personally, huge fan of cheerleading movies. I love the Bring It On series. Is it good? After the first one, I would argue not really. Do I love them? Absolutely. And I refuse to feel guilty about it. You don't have to only like media that is like good, objectively good, technically good. It's fine to like things that are just fun and silly. And so, yeah, that is the hill that I will die on today. If you want to let me know what your quote unquote guilty pleasures are in terms of consuming media, let me know. I think we should stop feeling guilty for them. Sometimes you can like just really silly, frivolous things, and that's okay. Even if it's not like good as an art, it can be good just because you like it. And that's most important to me. So I hope you liked today's content. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast and discussion of dunk culture and why I don't put disclaimers on my content. If you would like to submit any topic ideas or questions, you can slide in my DMs. I'm on Twitter, Instagram. You'll find all those links in the description. But you can also email ifyouseekandiepod@gmail.com. That's ifyouseekandiepod@gmail.com. That's where you can send questions or topics if you would be so inclined. Otherwise, I got topics on deck, I got lots of things that I have lots of opinions about. And that's what we're here for, aren't we? Just for my opinions because I'm so special. And feel free to hit follow. I don't know. This is going up as an audio podcast and also will be up on my YouTube channel as a video. So feel free to check that out. And I'll see you again in 2 weeks.